Hello, all you friendly and sometimes unfriendly faces. Welcome to League Unlock. My name is Eric. Thanks for hanging out with us. And it is now time to fully preview the 2019 World Championship because 24 teams have all qualified. Yes, 24. It is a absolutely stacked field. Obviously, we have to whittle that down to 16 through the play-in stage, but we are starting things off with some power rankings. And yes, we will include all 24 teams down to number one. And yeah, that's a lot to go through, so let's get things started. Obviously, it is difficult to rank a lot of these play-in teams. We're definitely not nearly as familiar as the major regions, but we start with those bottom four squads who will probably have a tough time getting out to even the knockout rounds when it comes to the play-in stage. Number 24, we got Mega Esports from the LST. Obviously, all these minor regions are going to be number one seeds and the champions from their respective regions. You're going to be somewhat familiar with some of these squads from either last year's Worlds or MSI this year. Isurus Gaming, the champions with Sia and Audi, who were there at MSI as well. They performed decently. Not terrific, but they were okay. They're at a 23. Mammoth Esports are from the OPL. They're your new champions. They have a couple of Dire Wolves members in Triple and King in that bottom lane. So again, some familiar faces from the Oceanic League. And number 21 is Detonation Focus Me, the champs from Japan and the LJL. And you should definitely be familiar with them when it comes to the international stage. They gave Cloud9 a run for their money in some matchups at 2018 Worlds. At 2019, they were so close to finishing, getting out of that spot, but it was Vega Squadron who finished 5-1. They were 4-2 in the same group to get out of knockouts. And I mean, Japan is quickly developing and evolving into a legit competitive region. So the fact that they continue to remain at the very top, I mean, that's a testament to them. That's why they're ahead of those other three squads. But again, any of those four are going to be hard-pressed to finish near the top of their groups and actually finish. But I mean, again, it's hard to rank a lot of these minor regions. That's by no means writing them off completely. They could still finish as a second seed for sure. 20 to number 11 now. Obviously, there's a lot of squads that we're going to be talking about here, and there are, of course, some familiar faces, but there's also some new people that'll be making their international debut as organizations, and one of them is Flamengo Esports from the CB LoL. This is the team we wanted to see at MSI. They completely destroyed the opening split in Brazil, but fell short in the finals. This time, the regular season wasn't quite as dominant, but they did get that 3-2 win over INTZ in the finals. We'll see them at Worlds. BRTT and Shrimp, formerly of Dignitas, making their way to the World Championship. That's not a typo, by the way, at number 19. Unicorns of Love, formerly of the EU LCS, the fan favorites. They used to have Visit Chachi, Hillisang, and all the boys there. Well, the organization moved over to the LCL in Russia, and now they have qualified with a 3-2 win over the Vega Squadron, and they actually have some former Vega players on their squad who you will remember from MSI. Pineapple in the jungle and No Man's in the mid lane. They swapped over to the Unicorns, and then they beat their former squad in the finals, so got to be pretty satisfying for them. Sheepy is still the coach there, and Edward, formerly of Gambit, swapped over to there as support. He coached Rogue for a bit, went back to being a pro player, and he will return to the world stage. It's going to be fantastic to see that logo showing up again at the international stage because they never qualified for Worlds when they were in the EU LCS. They got oh so close a couple of times, but now we've got Hillisang, Vizichachi, and the Unicorns of Love at Worlds. It's going to be a fun time to kind of see all those people reunited. Moving on, number 18. And again, difficult to rank these, but 18 is Low-Key Esports. That's the second squad, the second seed from the VCS. Everyone was expecting Team Flash to get there. That had a lot of the players formerly from EVOS, but it was actually Low-Key who got it done in that losers bracket and qualifying over Flash to get here. They're obviously a distant second from the Marines when it comes to Vietnam. Follow that up. We've got a couple of the Taiwanese squads from the LMS. And you remember 2018, how bad things were for the LMS, but this is the first time that we will not have Flash Wolves in any capacity representing at the World Championship. They have been a staple there ever since 2015, so we're ushering in a new era. I feel like there's a good chance that both Hong Kong Attitude and AHQ are getting out and getting into that top 16, but Hong Kong Attitude, it'll be a little bit more difficult. I do feel like AHQ should be able to get out. Top 15 now, Royal Youth out of the TCL. We've always been talking up Turkey, that it is the next closest behind Vietnam to those major regions, and it's been a while since we haven't seen Supermassive on the international stage. Well, that's because Royal took them down in a best of 5. It went to game 5 in their grand finals. No reunion with Wolf and his former SKT pal in Hooney and Faker, but Royal absolutely deserved it. They were dominant in the regular season. They went 16-2. They've got the MVP closer on their squad, and Pilot, formerly of the LCKs, their AD carry. So excited to see what they can do. I'm just waiting for Turkey to really show up in a big way on the international stage. We've seen them get very close time and time before, whether it's MSI or the World Championship, but we'll see. This is truly the beginning of the change for Royal. Top 14 now. Splice, listen, they technically ran the entire gauntlet and got right to Fnatic in that final where they got pretty handily defeated. I think the meta for Splice, the 3 teams above them, it's absolutely better suited for them. That's why we have Splice below some of these other squads. Clutch, obviously the incredible run they did in the gauntlet, the reverse sweep against TSM. They took Team Liquid to 5 games. I think we see the potential there. That's why we have them ahead of Splice. And J-Team and the Gigabyte Marines are both very interesting cases. In terms of the Marines, the meta is absolutely perfect for them. I mean, they are G2, obviously not to the same level of consistency, but they are even more insane. They're playing the Garen Yumi. They had 40 kills in less than 30 minutes in Game 3, the clincher for them to win the Vietnamese series. And they had 3 losses in the regular season, but that was well before they had their roster kind of sorted out. They had no idea. There were some bans to Zeros, obviously, but that top lane combo of Zeros and Levi was absolutely insane for them. Levi's back into form. For J-Team, they dominated even harder in the LMS. This was, yes, Flash Wolves level of dominance. They went 12-0 in the regular season. They did drop a game in the grand finals to AHQ, but that series was not close. They were fully in control. Obviously, the main player to watch here, and the name that everyone will be familiar with, is Fofo in the mid lane. He's played at the All-Star event previously, and he's finally going to be able to showcase his talents on the international stage. But J-Team and the Marines, I think, are very close, and you could flip-flop between them for who should be higher. They're both right into the main stage at Worlds. But the Marines, Levi looks to be back on that carry performance. Zeros is as insane as ever. I fully expect the Marines to have some serious upset potential and take down some very stellar teams when it comes to that group stage. Very excited to see them back, and you know there will be some absolutely insane picks out of them. Coming up after the break, we hit the top 10, and yes, these are the teams that will be contending for the quarterfinal spot and a berth in the knockout rounds. We are back on League Unlocked, previewing and doing some power rankings ahead of Worlds 2019. Yes, it's about that time, and this is where the hype truly intensifies as we reach the top 10, and there are a lot of Western teams, a lot more than we're accustomed to seeing in the top 10, and this World Championship is just insane because there's no insane favorite that you just assume will at least be a lock for the World Finals, but we're going 10-6 to start things off, and North America's finest and greatest hope that seems to always fall onto them at the World Championship is, of course, Cloud9, and they come in at number 10 on the list for this World Championship. There's a good chance they exceed expectations. Nobody thought they'd get out of the group of death last time. Do they have that same buff when they're not playing through play-ins? They're right into the main draw. So obviously they went pretty close with Team Liquid. They got destroyed in that 5th game, but they were still close with them, so they come in at number 10. Number 9 is Invictus Gaming, and one of the most, if not the most interesting cases at this World Championship, because you are talking about the defending world champions. So the fact that they're number 9 seems a little bit insane. They did run through the gauntlet. They had to run through the gauntlet because they got destroyed in playoffs. It took them 5 games against JD Gaming, which was surprising considering they didn't even qualify for playoffs. And then it took them 5 against Top Esports as well, who were one of the best performing teams on the 2nd seed coming out of the regular season. IG absolutely deserved the win. Leanne, rookie jungler, started all 5 games in the gauntlet, and we've seen glimpses of the former IG and that world championship level, but not nearly as much as you would have expected throughout 2019, especially the summer split. Rookie and the Shy still kind of finding that form. Jackie Love has still been the most consistent player for them. Obviously, Ning getting swapped out. There's a lot of question marks around this squad, but if they're able to reach that potential that we've seen them reach before, then yeah, immediately this is a top 4 team, but it's a little too premature and early to kind of say they're going to find that form immediately. So they're in at number 9, but there's a very good chance that they are still finding themselves into that knockout round and fully asserted into that top 8, which is going to be a lot longer run for someone like Damwon, who comes in that top 8 kind of barrier for getting into quarterfinals. They have to obviously go through play-ins, which again, is going to be must-see TV for them going up against some of these play-in squads. The teams you saw later on our list, Unicorns of Love versus Damwon. I mean, that is going to be an absolute massacre. No offense to UOL, but Damwon is an absolute world-class team. So seeing them match up will be very fun. And we've seen, again, a lot of highs from this squad. There were, at times throughout the summer split, you were talking about them as the best team in Korea, especially when SKT was slumping. Nuggery and Showmaker, obviously the main 2 you're talking about, and they, again, have been in conversation for best in their role in Korea, and I just hope that the mental stays with them. We saw them get tilted against SKT, and we've seen teams countless years get tilted on the world stage. So hopefully some of this playoff experience will carry over for them, because it is still 3 rookies that are the core, 4 rookies that are the core of this team. So it's all about the mental approach for them, and maybe going through play-ins will actually help them in that regard. Right ahead of Damwon, you have RNG, Royal Never Give Up, the 2nd seed from the LPL, who really, you saw weaknesses that were exposed throughout their entire playoff run. I think there's no question that they have 4 world-class players on that roster in everyone but Lang Jing in that top lane. And top lane has been a weakness for RNG for a couple of years now. But Karsa, he just hasn't really paid much attention to that top lane, and that has been a big weakness for RNG, and we've seen them play around Uzi too much. That's not what the meta calls for. I think all the teams above RNG have shown a better understanding of the meta throughout the summer split, and that is why RNG is in at number 7, behind the highest ranked team in North America, maybe ever, that we've had for power rankings, save for probably TSM 2016-2017, when they disappointed, did not get out of groups. But Team Liquid, this is the year, this is the time for Doublelift to finally get out of groups. And again, Team Liquid is always difficult to judge because they are in a much weaker region than any of the other teams that are in this top 10, but you've got to account for them showing up at MSI, especially after the terrible start they had to that event, able to bounce back mentally, which was issues they had in 2018. This team is so mentally resilient and strong with people such as Core JJ, mainly world champion. So I don't think that's going to be an issue, and I think the group stage, even if they have a tough loss in it, I think they'll be able to bounce back with this roster. I think they should be getting into quarterfinals. They're going to be very likely to get a decent group because the first seed, they're actually in Pool 1, which actually makes a pretty big difference for them. I expect this to be the best year for Team Liquid, the best year for Doublelift. They've really, outside of a few best ofs, yeah, maybe it was their most difficult run to get that LCS title because it took them 5 games against Clutch and Cloud9, but 4 LCS titles in a row. This is the strongest they have looked coming into an international event, even more so than we saw them heading in to MSI this year. And obviously, they made it to the finals and made history for getting swept the fastest ever at an international event. But that is something that they can hopefully learn from if you're a North American fan. And if they match up against some other European, or they will match up against some top squads from the other major regions. Hopefully they have learned from the midseason invitational, but this isn't just playing around double lift like RNG does a lot of the time with Uzi. Impact has stepped up in a huge way. Jensen is obviously fantastic. I think the biggest question mark for them will be Xmithy against the other world-class junglers, but we have seen him perform pretty damn well before at international events. So Team Liquid coming in hot at number 6. Coming up after the break, we hit the top 5. These aren't just knockout contenders. These are contenders to win the entire event. And when there's no clear-cut favorite, it's pretty tough to decipher through. What is up, down, and sideways, everybody? We are back on League Unlock, hitting the top 5 for power rankings ahead of the World Championship. And listen, any list you're doing coming into this event, whether it's player rankings, team rankings, it's going to be the most difficult of any World Championship because it is so close. There are favorites for the event, but there's no SKT of 2015, Samsung teams in 2014, even RNG or KT Rolster last year. I think the field is much more wide open than we have ever seen. That being said, the top 5 are the most stacked of the stacked and probably have the best chance of actually hoisting that Summoner's Cup. And the lowest on this list, or number 5, might be the most controversial on it. Maybe these guys shouldn't be so high, people will say. We're talking about Griffin from the LCK because they qualified for the World Championship without even winning a best of 5 because they lost in both finals. They had the bye right through there. But the talent level on Griffin and this final against SKT was absolutely rolling coming into it. And I think Griffin, yes, they got destroyed in that Game 4, but they also showcased that they can bounce back from a 2-0 series deficit and not completely roll over and die. That Game 3 where they came back with an absolute bang and a force and destroyed SKT. They crushed them in that Game 3. So there's still some hope for Griffin. We've still seen that ceiling, and I think the tilt factor or being able to bounce back from all that mental stuff has definitely only made them better and improved them. The talent on this roster is undeniable. Chovy, Tarzan, Viper, even Lahens, they're all absolutely world-class. The main question is, can Doran / Sword step up on the international stage? Fnatic comes in at number 4. We saw them go toe-to-toe with G2 in back-to-back series. They absolutely, G2's number 1 for a reason, and Fnatic was so close to taking them down not once but twice. Follow that up by destroying Splice in that meaningless game for them. Fnatic, I think, deserving of that number 4 spot. Fun plus Phoenix in at number 3, the LPL champions, and one of the most exciting teams coming into this event. Obviously, who knows what DoinB is going to pick, but to see that this team actually finally delivered in the postseason is really exciting. They completely destroyed, annihilated the regular season in both splits for the LPL. They didn't have to take down IG or Top to get here, but they did have to take down, RNG, who are a pretty big force when it comes to the LPL, and I think FunPlus did it in pretty dominant fashion. There was that very close Game 3 that could have gone either way, but in the wins, I think it was very clearly FunPlus. They were in control for the majority of them. They seem to have a much better grasp on the meta than RNG, as we've kind of already talked about. I think the solo laners have been great for FunPlus, and really top to bottom, there's no real weak point or weak link on this roster that you can talk about. Gimgoon has had some questionable performances, but his outstanding play has definitely overwhelmed or had more of than when he's had some Nico ults that he's completely whiffed on. So there's no huge weak link on FunPlus Phoenix. Is there a weak link on SK Telecom, the champions from the LCK? Listen, this is the first time we're talking about SKT coming into an event and not being huge favorites. I guess 2017 they weren't huge favorites. That was on Longzhu, and how did that turn out for them? But the SKT obviously blitzed their way through the playoffs. There was a lot of ups and downs for them throughout this summer split. The 1-5 start, 13 games in a row. Then they slump again at the end of the regular season before, again, destroying through the playoffs. Afrika and Griffin gave them some pushback, but they were clearly still the better team against Griffin in that best of series. And there's a lot of positives for SKT, but the one maybe weak point you can still talk about is they rely a little bit too heavily on Clid, especially in that early game. We saw that at MSI when he was the MVP of the group stage for them, but that didn't really hold up against G2 and throughout a lot of the summer split. That's why they were struggling. When Clid isn't playing at an MVP level, SKT looks like a much weaker team. Luckily for them, he played at an MVP level throughout pretty much the entirety of the playoffs. I think Khan, obviously his mental game will be a bit of a question mark, but I think that he'll stand up to the test. He has a lot to prove on the international stage. He's been a part of Kingzone and Longzhu, who kind of disappointed when it came to that international stage. Effort will be a question mark because he's so young, but when you have the greatest support of all time mentoring you and there as a substitute in Mata, I think that SKT will be just fine and should be right there as the big favorites alongside the champs from G2, who are going for the Grand Slam, both spring and summer titles, the MSI one and the World Championship. I just don't think there's any way you can talk about G2 as not being a favorite here. I think they're 1A and 1B with SKT for this event. I want a rematch of that best of 5 semis that we got from MSI this year. But G2, I mean, they've had their moments where they've had some questionable games. I mean, they got destroyed against Fnatic in a couple of those matchups, but that's just the name of the game. A lot of the times they have incredibly one-sided matches, but they're the most exciting team to watch. I hope they're in a bracket with the Gigabyte Marines because I need to see G2 versus Zeros and Levi. That would be so much fun, but the meta is perfect for G2. That's why they've dominated 2019. Flex picks in those solo laners. Jankos obviously stepped up in a huge way in the summer split, and I think that's only taken them to another level. The only reason they struggled more in the playoffs here in summer is because Fnatic boosted up. They stepped up to another level. The rest of the competition is not even close in Europe to G2 and Fnatic, but G2 should be right there with SKT as favorites. And I honestly think that there is a legitimate chance that we see Fnatic and G2 again in the top 4, just like we saw in 2018, but with a legitimate chance to make some noise. If you got G2 and Fnatic in the finals, man, that would be absolutely incredible. But I think the top 3 is a lock. Maybe you can argue FPX a little bit higher, but I think G2, SKT, and FunPlus are clearly your top 3 favorites coming into this event with people, you know, Fnatic, Griffin, maybe RNG, Team Liquid kind of as that second tier below them. Maybe Liquid's a little bit distant of a third tier, but Fnatic is right there, right behind those favorites just because of how well they played against G2. Worlds 2019 going to be insane. That's it today for League Unlocked. My name's Eric. Thanks for hanging. We'll see you next time.